Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast. This is Anton Garcia Fernandez coming to you over YouTube from Jackson in the state of Tennessee in the United States of America. And today we're going to have an interview with somebody that has been on the podcast before, at least a couple of times, but it's been quite a long time and a lot seems to have happened since the last time we spoke. He's in Saratoga Springs, right on the other side of the line. And I'm talking about and with a New York City-based tenor, saxophonist, composer, arranger, educator who's worked hard to bring jazz to multiple places around the world via the U.S. State Department, and whose two latest releases on SteepleChase Records out of Denmark, 100 Years from Today from 2019, and On the Shoulders of Giants from 2020 are wonderful and showcase him in a piano-less and guitar-less sextet setting featuring many of his compositions. Let's welcome to the show today, Chris Byars. Chris, thanks for being here, and it's a pleasure to see you again.
Oh, Mr. Anton, this is wonderful to be in touch again, and it feels good. It feels like we're coming out of the pandemic to be talking to you. It means good things are happening again. We're not on lockdown and wondering how long this is going to go on and coming to terms with, so many difficulties. I do want to just say a couple of words of thanks. First of all, to anybody that is listening, really do appreciate your interest and the fact that you know Anton's work. That means that you are among the most refined of listeners and scholars and aficionados of good things. So good going. That's a compliment to you. It says a lot about you. And if you find anything I have to say interesting at all, I'm flattered. And secondly, Anton, big thanks to you for what you do. You're an example of how one person can make a big difference in this world. You have no doubt worked long and hard at the things you love, long in advance of any kind of recognition or compensation of any kind. You just went for what you love, and that says a lot about you. And folks, if you are like Anton, it's a better world. So be like Anton. All right, so that's my opening remarks, Your Honor, and we may begin.
And that definitely is not scripted. I didn't send you anything in writing for you to say that kind of thing. So I truly appreciate that. Now, jazz has really helped me out throughout this pandemic, being able to listen to the music and being able to be around the music, even if it was not in a live setting, just through records, through reading about it. I had a little more time to actually sit down and listen, to sit down and read. How has jazz helped you through this pandemic, Chris? Personally, professionally, in any way that you would like to talk about?
Oh, it's strange. It's strange, Anton. I wish I could say that I went into full speed and was very prolific, and I have like buckets of new things to throw at everyone. But it really did function as a kind of a quiet meditation, a stepping away from it. Most people that are not related to me are not familiar with my background, but I have been on a sort of an unrelenting music itinerary since the age of 6. And this comes with being born of 2 working musicians and being not pushed, but definitely encouraged to participate in all kinds of activities throughout my life, instrumental, vocal, musical theater, opera, ballet. I mean, I didn't really ever get a break. And this is like not even so much educational, but like performance. I've been on stage my whole blooming life here. And to be this separated for this long has given me a chance to connect with some other things. One short, simple lesson that I feel like I've learned is that we are more than what we do. And it is not up to any person to prove their worth by, their output. People are worth something to the rest of the world without the resume, without the credentials and awards and all of that. You don't have to be the best or be extraordinary or whatever. It's more about being there for people, and this is from giving, but also receiving. You don't have to be the best to enjoy things and to live your life. This has been a very interesting lesson because it's been a bit of a Olympic event up until now. As far as music goes, I have had the chance in that kind of quiet, meditative time to, I had a great project I did for NDR. I say great, I'm proud of how it came out, but it was a great honor and opportunity for me to do this. This was about a year ago. I was right in the middle of it. And, well, those of you with your jazz calendars out know that Charlie Parker did turn 100 years old a year ago in August. And, well, unfortunately, the pandemic canceled any kind of broad celebration of that. But I got to do a concert. It was amazing how they were able to make that happen with all the quarantine rules. They had a big band in Hamburg playing this. Let me give just a little bit of background for this. So the German jazz orchestras are government sponsored, an interesting concept for Americans because we can't imagine this, that the government would take taxpayer money and fund hundreds of staff, musicians, librarians, setup people, agents, publicity, camera, all like a whole team to bring new music to their radio audiences on a weekly basis. Okay. Can you imagine that? And it's not just one place. They have several of these places in Germany. So they do rely on people from all around the world. I've had the chance to do about 6 or 7 projects. This was my first for the NDR Orchestra, which is based in Hamburg. I had done previous projects with the Cologne-based WDR. So this project was on the centennial Charlie Parker. I did compose a couple of originals. One was an imagination of if Bird played with Tad Dameron's band, which unfortunately never happened. But it's like, okay, let's create what that might have sounded like. And they were happy to, you can imagine being a lead alto player with that assignment. He was delighted. Oh, I get to be Bird and Tad Dameron's band. And another one was the retelling of Charlie Parker's biography. I called it Birdography. And I told it musically. But, one nice thing, Anton, about being a writer is that you have the choice of presentation method. I'm a big fan of David Lynch, for example. He takes all kinds of liberties with how he presents things. And so I said, all right, they always talk about with presentations, the last thing you hear is the lasting impression, what you leave the audience with. So unfortunately, in the case of Charlie Parker, that's his untimely passing at age 34. Like Mozart's another tragic figure, and we tend to forget that these are prolific, incredibly talented people that changed the world in a short time. And that's what made them special, not the fact that they had an early exit. So I said, well, let's tell the story in reverse. We'll start with the untimely passing and work our way backwards and end up in Kansas City with some fun swing music. So that was the form of that song. And I did a few other Bird originals on mythology, anthropology, Billy's Bounce, stuff that everybody knew. Really fun. And they played this thing, how do you get 17 musicians together and socially distance with plexiglass? It looked like a football field, spaced out evenly. And I don't know how they could hear each other on time. I guess they had headphones. That helped. But it must have been quite interesting to be 400 yards away from your colleague that's trying to play a unison part with you. Anyway, so all of that happened a year ago. But, by and large, several weeks would go by, with just living, just getting through it. I've been a busy bee, but not with music. So we'll talk about that too. But anyway, you asked about how's it been. That's how it's been from the music perspective. A lot of downtime, a lot of sitting back, reflecting. Uh, I have all of my close friends. We didn't lose anybody terribly close. Andy Fusco was the closest COVID victim to me. So that was a tragic loss. But we're ready. We're ready to come out swinging, Anton. This is starting to heat up in New York.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. The pandemic, of course, still around. We have this feeling that it's been a year, so things are maybe improving a little bit. Of course, the virus is so far not going anywhere, and I'm wondering, what do things look like in New York City this summer as far as live jazz, live music in general are concerned?
Well, so now it's on to answer that question. I got to give you background B, which is I'm changing into my Clark Kent costume here, and out of the Superman uniform. I'm complimenting myself there. I don't think I'm a musical Superman, but I've had a job in civil service, actually 3 in the last year. I've been a Spanish interpreter for the elections, which was very interesting last November in the middle of COVID. And
Muy bien.
I did. Thank you. And I did census taking. I walked around, asked people how many people live in the house and how old they are, what their names are, and that was interesting during COVID. But for the last year, I've been a contact tracer. I've been telling people they have to stay home because they have COVID or because they know someone that has COVID, or I call them and say, how are you doing with your COVID? Lately, we've been calling to urge them to get the vaccine because there's not a lot of COVID. But I do want to say COVID rates are on the rise, and we are seeing numbers right now that we haven't seen in a couple of months. And it is as of the last week or two. So the Delta variant would love to get to know you, especially if you haven't been vaccinated. But I did talk to someone last week who had been vaccinated in January with Pfizer, and she had 5 symptoms of COVID. So something broke through and got her, pretty bad. Probably not as bad as if it would have if she had not been vaccinated. But, we're not done. And so to answer your question, how are things? I think the restrictions and the policies are based a little bit more on the good news of 2 weeks ago than the bad news of today and yesterday. And we may, if it's going to keep going, we may see a rollback of this good times, and we're back, everybody back in the lockdown. If we're not careful, and that's New York. I don't really know how the rest of the country is, but I don't think we're out of this thing just yet. That being said, in the lessening of the restrictions in the last month, I've gotten to connect with musicians that I haven't seen in a while. It is wonderful to connect again. It's the stuff we've dedicated our lives to, friendships that have been in place for many years, and people are just so ready to play. And I think I'm going to go one further. This has been my hope personally, but also externally with audiences and other musicians, that we take it for granted less, that we're more open as listeners. We're more interested in, we've had a lot of times with ourselves, right? In the last year and plus months. Now it's time to hear everyone else and to not block that out and be so concerned with ourselves. It's so much more interesting to be around other people. Why wouldn't we listen to everything they're playing and get more in touch with them? And that's when jazz is at its best, not over Zoom with your cut and paste performances where one person is actually not able to hear the other to start. I find all of those, I'm sorry to put it all in one thing, but they're regrettable. What we had to do, and I did 4 embassy programs for the U.S. State Department during this time, where we put together Ari Roland's group one at a time. My good man on drums, Keith Bali, he's playing with a metronome and a roadmap of what we're going to eventually do. And how can he respond to a solo that hasn't happened? He's just playing the best he can. Well, that's not really what it's about. So now we get to all be together and react as it's happening with the joy, but the interest in other people. You know, it's exactly like when you're back with your family again, and you're so happy that you could see somebody and hug them and not be endangering them or yourself. It's just like that musically, and that is wonderful.
Well, that is something, Chris, that I think you've always done really well. Be exposed to music from other places, to other cultures, through extensive traveling, bringing jazz to different parts of the world, also listening to others, because listen to your records, that's something you can tell. That you know who you play with, that you know them well, and that you listen to them. You don't just write for them because you are a composer, but because you know who you're playing with and what you want to do. And this is almost like a little segue on my part to talk a little bit about these two albums that I have, these two CDs that I have on my desk this afternoon. And it's incredible how long ago I last talked to you, because these sessions on this first of these two albums for SteepleChase Records, called 100 Years from Today, goes back to February of 2018. The sessions go back to February 2018. The album was released in 2019. I'll say it again, 100 years from today. Of course, that Victor Young song is on there, but all the others are your own compositions. And so in talking about this album, Chris, it looks to me like there is some kind of a concept behind this album. Could you tell us a little bit about what that concept is?
Anton, you're too kind. First of all, again, thanks for your interest. This is, I feel like putting this together is, you know, trying to do the best for everyone, but it's also working through how I see the world. And the fact that another person would take interest in that is it's a huge compliment. So thank you, and anybody else that listens to it. Yeah, so both of these records are reaching out to other people, actually. So the first one, 100 Years from Today, well, that is the name of the standard, but the rest of the songs, as you mentioned, are originals, and song by song, it's patterned after my dedication to a specific composer or influential musician of the past. I initially had thought of doing an all monk album, and the problem with an all monk album is there's more great monk tunes than can fit on an album. So now you're saying, I like this one, but that other one that doesn't deserve to be on my record, that's a problem. You can't put them all in one. It's too many. So you wind up trying to just put everything into a few songs. Too hard. So then if you're going to do one song per composer, that's really hard. You're going to say monk is represented by this one song. Well, that can't be true. But you can write a song that is inspired by monk, and that sums up monk in its totality, in through your own lens. So I okay, that's working. Let me do Bud Powell. All right, that I like that. Freddie Red. Okay, Gigi Grice. Okay, Lucky Thompson. Boom. So I was able to do this. The composing process was really interesting on that song, on that CD. I wrote 5 or 6 of those songs in the same morning, which is really nuts. I wish I had a morning like this over and over again, but I was handwriting on little scraps of paper on the couch, and they just kept coming. After the second or third one, I said, well, this is funny. Let me see if I can do another one. And another one came, and it was like a bulk drop-offs, like I don't know. I ordered too many songs, and they all came at once. Well, the second album that you stated, On the Shoulders of Giants, by the way, that's not meant to be a self-compliment. The giants are referring to others. It refers to a saying by Umberto Eco. Now, Anton, you're an academic. You can appreciate this. This is a concept that when you're doing doctoral work or master's thesis, you're not trying to reinvent knowledge. You're trying to add to a knowledge base. And it's okay if it's 0.0001% better, because that's progress. That's how we get somewhere as a community, is that everyone puts in. And you listed, and people can use that to refer in their work. And so Umberto Eco said, we can see far in the distance because we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's what we're trying to do musically, is we're not trying to do it alone. We're rooted in what's come before, and we use that as inspiration for new stuff or progress of some kind. That CD, the material was dedicated to the musicians on the CD, one at a time. This was funny because they didn't know, and I didn't tell them until they figured it out. I wanted to play a little game and see when they could figure it out. And I think one by one, it dawned on them. The clue was in the titles of the songs. Their name, whether it's the first name or last name, is hidden. Now, you might have noticed that Nashville is in there, being from Tennessee. Well, that's Zaid Nasser's tune. I couldn't find anything with Zaid in it. It's a very unique name, but Nashville is close enough. And if you looked at all the other ones, John Mosca had Moscow, and Ari Rowland had Arizona, and that was a nickname that someone used to call him. So, you could sort of put it, I see what's going on here. But they didn't mention it until the record date. And, I finally said, all right, guys, no one's mentioned this, but these songs are for you. And they all went, yeah, we know, Chris. Yeah. Like it was already out of the bag to them, but no one had actually talked about it. So it was pretty funny. The songs do try to address them musically and as people, but specifically musically, like where their vibe is coming from. So it is a comment. It's not just like I tried to write something good and feature them. Like it's like, this is you, partner, trying to sum them up as I see them. So hopefully they don't mind. Hopefully they enjoy the tune and it's somewhat unmarked. So these were interesting experiments, and if I can just say one more quick thing, being very verbose here, so pardon my rambling. I hope it's interesting. The concept of these two was to deal with the loss of my good friend Pasquale Grasso, and we talked about this in our last interview several years ago, that he was going on to Sony Records and wasn't going to be able to record, so we're going to have to change something up. So what we have is we replace the guitar with an alto sax. They don't do the same thing. The alto is a melodic instrument. You can't comp. But as a 3-horn section behind a horn soloist, we can comp if it's arranged. You've got 3-part harmony. You've got 2-horn unison to give the trombone a rest, because you can't play trombone as long without your lips feeling like someone's punching. So we would go into unison, and you can hear this throughout. There's also some time where no one's comping, and it's just the soloist and the bass and the drums. That has to happen too, to give everyone a rest. But the problem with that is, with original music, when you have melody, bass, and drums, if it's an original song, it's very hard to understand. If it's Sunny Side of the Street or All of Me, everybody knows those songs, and we can hear the chords just as they're referred to by what the soloist is playing. But if it's a new set of chords, good luck. Sounds like Ornette Coleman. It sounds random and might be rhythmic, but you're missing some of the culture that may be inherent in what's being presented. So a lot of comping, a lot of huffing and puffing. That gig is exhausting. We've had some opportunities to play outside, and I turned them down, because you cannot play outside as a horn player and be huffing and puffing nonstop. Your face is going to fall off. It takes superhuman strength to keep that up, like a marching band kind of thing. Oh God, that's not us. So yeah, it's a different concept. Bass, drums, 4 horns, highly arranged, backgrounds decided, lots of shout choruses, melodies very carefully presented, and there's not very little like, here, you take it and we'll be back soon. That doesn't happen a lot in that band. And it's tough. Charts are 4 or 5 pages each. We have to rehearse like crazy, or else we get lost, and there are lots of mistakes. So we're working on it. It's a work in progress, and we do have a 3rd CD that we're looking forward to. So that is the long story for this Nice question that you asked. Thank you, Anton.
Well, Chris, I got to tell you, I love the ensemble playing on these two albums. It really is wonderful to get to hear a sextet, no piano, no guitar, and the invention that you have to come up with in order to fulfill or fill, in this case, I guess, the lack of those instruments. And there's a couple of questions that kind of come to mind after what you explained about the process of composition. On this piano and guitar-less sextet, besides Chris Byars, we have Zaid Nasser, Stefano Doglioni, John Mosca, Ari Roland, and Phil Stewart. And it is true, as you mentioned before, and it's very interesting that you wrote these tunes on the shoulders of giants, specifically for each one of your bandmates. And I wonder, how do you do this? How do you approach this? What do you concentrate on when you are writing a tune, not necessarily for yourself, not necessarily for a big band, but for a specific musician that you know really well and have worked with closely?
Well, first of all, it's a privilege to be in that position. For that to happen, you need to know a very special musician, and they tell you how to write this original song by their preferences, that who they love, what you could hear them doing. But to all the writers out there, I would say, when you put a note down, you have to imagine the person that you're writing for playing that note. This is a trick that Duke Ellington would do. He would write for his players, not their instruments, and you can hear it sort of come alive. They knew, oh, you want me to take this note and be me, okay. And it's fun, part of jazz is it's kind of random and subconscious and hard to predict. And so what we offer as musicians, ensemble musicians, but composers as well, soloists, listeners, compers, is a lifelong process of concept, of developing how we think music should go, the world according to you, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a sound. We call it I call it your sound. Anton, you have your sound, and you sit down with your sound before the music starts, and you're ready to hear what's coming and contrast it with your sound. So what you have to do is, when you're doing what I did, to dedicate a song inspired by a certain friend or historical character, you think about their sound. It might not be so much as specific acts, recreations, but what would someone do in a new situation, and kind of reimagine their improvisation, their reaction, their response. It takes a little bit of creative leap, but that's fun. You're getting into the gray area that makes art much better than, sorry to upset anyone, but like billiards, for example, which is not as creative. So one way to hit that shot in the hole. With music, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Really sorry if I offended anybody that likes to play. I like to play pool too, but I do consider jazz to be a little bit more, I don't know, interesting in the long term.
I guess it depends on whether you play 8-ball or snooker, but yeah.
That's true. Snooker, much more highly refined, actually. Think about it, Anton. You and the listeners out there, what is your sound? Like, you have a concept and you develop this your whole life. Listeners have careers. I sit and I'm affected by who is going to listen to me. I remember sitting, and a good friend passed away a couple years ago, Bobby Rogovin, sitting in the front row. And I can't wait to talk to him afterwards to hear what he has to say. And as I'm playing, I'm thinking, this guy sat and heard Dizzy Gillespie. And now he's sitting and hearing me, like, uh-oh. I mean, this guy's going to sit there and go, well, I heard Dizzy. Now, what's this guy doing? And then I want to know what he heard. I want to hear how this filtered through his sound. And, so listeners, you have a career. You're working on this just as much as the composers and the ensemble players. We're all on this path together. We just get better and better. We just add to it, and we make progress as a culture and a community together. So, thanks for being on board. I don't want to do this alone.
You mentioned, Chris, that on 100 years from today, the compositions for the album are tributes to some musicians that have exerted some sort of influence on you. People like Lucky Thompson, Thelonious Monk, Tad Dameron, Freddie Redbud Powell, Gigi Grice, Bird, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie. Also drummer Jimmy Lovelace, who may not be as well known as the previous ones I mentioned. I suppose Jack T. Gordon as well, since you included 100 years from today. But the thing is, maybe not so much.
No, that was just to say it was the opposite of let's look back 100 years. It was let's do something, and I wonder what's going to happen 100 years from now. It actually wasn't based on Jack Teagarden, although I appreciate his output.
Now, the question, though, is
Sure.
how different, Chris, is it to write tunes specifically for your bandmates and write tunes as a tribute to people that have meant so much to you?
Mm-hmm. Same process. Because whether they're alive or dead, whether I met them or I didn't, I still have the evidence of their sound based on their output, their choices. We have fingerprints. We're little patterns that never repeat. The human's choices. It's just like how you can recognize someone's voice over the phone, or you see somebody that you went to school with 20 years ago and you recognize how they look. People define themselves for you, and if you're careful to record that, you can interpret that through your own feedback and say, this is you. I'm a mirror. Have a look at yourself, and whether I know them or not, it's because it's abstract. It's based on the 12 notes and usually 4 beats a bar and A, B, A, some parameters that were common, and so, yeah, same process. I will say this, the accountability and the liability is a little bit different, because when you say, I'm writing a song about Bird, it's one thing. Everyone can comment on it. Well, yeah, this is what I think about Bird. But when you say to your friend, I'm writing a song about you, he can say, hey, schmuck, this song isn't very good. Like, what are you saying about me? And I'll write a song about you, So that's a little different. That's kind of funny.
You're listening to a new episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast. I'm Anton Garcia Fernandez, coming to you from Jackson in the state of Tennessee. And up in Saratoga Springs, we have Chris Byars. We're talking about 2 albums that he has released lately, although lately means, well, in some cases, a couple of years ago. 100 years from today, and On the Shoulders of Giants on the SteepleChase label out of Denmark, one of my favorite labels, by the way. And talking about On the Shoulders of Giants, Chris, there's a couple of songs on there, a couple of tunes dedicated to and inspired by your wife, whom you recently or fairly recently married, Keeper and Third Culture Kid. Tell us a little bit about those 2 songs.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah. So Keeper is the quintessential love song. Hey, here's your tune. I love you. Don't try to remember it. If you hear it played, we're trying to tell you something. Yeah. People are lucky to get one of those a lifetime. If you get 2, it's bonus round. The Third Culture Kid is more of a commentary on her situation, because it's very interesting. So my wife was lucky enough to be born into an interesting family, as I was, but in a different way. Her father was a silver medalist for the Soviet shooting team. Okay. And he won a silver medal in 1960, and this enabled, well, he's really great at what he did. Air rifles, one of the best in the world at the time. And what you do when you're that good is you get coaching gigs, and then you can move to this place anywhere in the world that you get your coaching gig. And so my wife grew up originally in Turkmenistan, a very interesting place in Central Asia, and then lived a little bit in Egypt, but then back to Turkmenistan, and then a while in the Philippines. That was her grade school, grade 1 through 12 in Manila, and then moved back to Turkmenistan, then to Russia for college, for art school, and the first 4 years or so of a career in fashion design and illustration. So someone who is born somewhere, then moves somewhere else, and then moves somewhere else is called a third culture kid. It is a kind of person. And I didn't know this until I met her, but it's in a way difficult, challenging, because you don't really feel as much in touch with that first place you're from, but it's where you're from. And then you might have the place where you grew up, and that has formed a lot of your values and your sentimentality, but then you have the place where you are, and you're trying to fit in there, and you have it all mixed up together. But you benefit from all that at the same time, because you're not as, limited by one point of view. So there are many people out there that are like this. Of course, we have different words. Expatriates is one nice way of saying it. Immigrants can be another way of saying it. But what happens when you've been several places? What's that like? And well, musically, the song is like that. It has an A, B, C form. So whatever happened in the first A is not happening in the B. Whatever happened in the C didn't happen in the B or in the A. And it has the number 3 kind of written in the form like that. 16, 16, 16. There's some interludes just to change it up. This song is the hardest song we've ever played. So forgive us, when we play it live, because we may have a total breakdown. We did it with Smalls one time. It's a disaster, mainly because I messed up. But yeah, it's fun to play, and when it works, it's just as much fun as the other. So that's her 2 songs. The Keeper is, hi, I love you, let's get married and spend our lives together. But the Third Culture Kid is more of a personal commentary on who she is.
Looks like you're birds of a feather in the sense of traveling. You both have traveled quite a bit, for different reasons, and that kind of makes me think about, how big of a role does all your worldwide traveling play in the music that you make? What do you learn from being in contact with other cultures or with other musical traditions? Then, juxtaposing that with jazz. What could you tell us about that?
Well, we're going to need another hour for one thing, but there is a lot in common with how we are all so differently ourselves. Music is very important to people. Family is important. Eating is important. Fun is important. Exercise, we have a lot of stuff in common, and music is right in there. Music is key to being a human being. So the different ways that people do it is very interesting. People that have fewer resources have a different way of making music. And it's very more vocal, it's more dance based, it's more percussion based. People with lots of education and resources and support make more complicated music, usually more cerebral in a way, more intellectual, and it might have contain a higher weight of understanding needed with it. But it's not that it's any deeper than something that is indigenous, music created in boxes and sticks and singing and dancing. There's not one that's deeper than the other, but they're different. And jazz, I would vote to say that it is the most flexibly applied to all these situations in our travels, mostly due to Ari Rowland's success at hooking up these kind of gigs. We were able to play jazz for 50 different countries in person, but also to play 2 or 3 or 4 songs of theirs per concert in a jazz style. I can't go and learn how to play, indigenous music or, Romanian music or wherever we happen to be, Bahraini, but I can play their tune as a jazz tune. It will be enough of their song for them to recognize it, but then to learn about jazz because they hear the style that we're presenting it. They'll hear 20 seconds of that melody and then an alto solo for a minute and then another bout with the melody and then a bass solo. And so we have them on the hook due to the flexibility of the human attention span. We can recognize and assimilate something that we don't understand for a little while, and eventually we disregard it. So you don't want to go on too long, right? But it's been fun. The people I've met, the food I've eaten, the things I've seen. I mean, I've seen wonders of the world: Petra, the pyramids, the Forbidden Palace. I can't believe the things I've gotten to see. And the whole time I'm saying, jazz took me here. Things that you didn't know were amazing. The mountains of Eastern Turkey, Morocco. I mean, ancient Roman ruins in Romania. The site of the Trojan War, the siege of Troy. Like, I can't believe what I've seen. And it's because of this great art of jazz and actually the love of jazz for the people of planet Earth. They're interested. They want to know more. If they've heard a little, they want to know more. If they've never heard it and they hear it, they want to know more. And if they love it already, they want to know more. So I think we're on to something good here, Anton.
Absolutely.
Universally loved. Must be pretty good.
And we are lucky too to be able to listen to your recordings. These two albums, 100 Years from Today and On the Shoulders of Giants, are two albums featuring what you call your original sextet. Can you tell us in what way do you use that word original? Is it original because of the lineup? Is it original because it's a new project that you have? In what sense should we understand that word?
Well, specifically, that was my cue to try to write more original music. I wanted to hold myself accountable to that, but I don't mind the other associations you included there. That those are all true as well, I hope. And kind of like what Umberto Eco said about just making a little bit of progress. That's our goal. It's not to sum it all up. It's just to move things forward an inch, and to have the help of the world of music behind us. Music is so powerful. It's more powerful than any person or any group could ever be. So we're in this together. If this conjures up, Freddie Redd or Charlie Parker or Dizzy Gillespie for you, or helps you get to know my bandmates through their compositions, well, that's great. I mean, that's something we're in together. I throw the ball and you catch it. This is 50-50 here, guys. It's not all on me. It's your love of music. It's your accepting, your open ears. How selfless it is to listen and to take something in. You have no way of shielding yourself. You have to listen to every note. I mean, you can run away or turn it off, I suppose, but to truly listen is an egoless gift of action towards the person who's making music. I'm deeply grateful. I don't think if nobody listened, I don't think I would play. I play for the listeners. I play for the exchange and the opportunity to be heard. So, and that's something I've really missed in this pandemic. There's no listeners. I can't play for anybody. I'm not allowed to blow air at somebody if there's a respiratory contagious disease. That's the worst thing I could do. So, gosh, thank you to you, Anton. Thank you for your listeners. They're on to something good, and they're valuable members of the team. We need them to take care, live long, put a lot of effort into it, and keep an open mind, keep doing what you're doing.
Well, before I let you go, I got a couple of things I wanted to mention. The first thing is 100 years from today and On the Shoulders of Giants were recorded about a year apart, almost exactly a year apart, February 2018, February 2019. I wonder if you see any sort of evolution in the sound, any changes, anything that's different on the Shoulders of Giants, which is the second album, when compared to 100 years from today.
Right. Well, for sure. It's anytime you get to do something again, it's not the first time, and it's so the jitters of will this work are no longer there. There's also the expectation. You don't want to let people down. You don't want the first one to be one and done, and then the second one wasn't so good. So there's pressure the second time around. Yeah, it felt like we were more familiar with the concept the second time. The first time, honestly, I love it. I feel like we hit a lucky note. We got a lucky flight of the arrow into the bullseye on that first recording, because I did not know what that was going to sound like. And to just look, Anton, what kind of musicians am I playing with that they can take a new concept, new material, and make it come together like that? I mean, who does that? How do you create something that anyway? I'm in awe of these people, because at least I knew what I wanted. They didn't know. It's coming from them, and they are to be appreciated, in their efforts very much. And the second time, so we had more of a reference point. The material was new again, so they had to learn the new stuff. Can't play what you played the time before, but you're more familiar with the sort of shocking level of backgrounds, for example, or the complexity of who goes next. It's a little bit like running an airport, Anton, playing one of those tracks. Very, very complicated. But second time around, little easier, little more. I would say we had more of a chance to settle in rhythmically, because we weren't as preoccupied with what's happening next. But that first time, there was the excitement of, oh my God, we've never done this before. So they're different in that way. These two records are very different.
Now, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that there may be a third volume or a third record in the works right now. So my final question is simply, Chris, what are you working on right now? What are your plans for the near future, musically or personally, or whatever you want to share with the audience?
Okay, well, I'm still a contact tracer, so I'm going to keep riding that one out until we beat this pandemic. So don't make me call you, okay? Don't get sick, because I will ask you to stay home. In the meantime, in between helping other people get their projects started, I've had a lot of calls from people to help with arranging and music prep. I do that for people. I am starting up, completing an album. We have 3-4 good songs done. I used to like to make it to 10. I want to get to 10 songs to get a new CD. That's probably going to be recorded in December. The way it was, I've been waiting for the 2020s, Freudian slip there, because I think it's hilarious to say that we're one of the best bands of the 20s, because this is something I've been reading, in the history books all of my life. The teens didn't really sound right, the oh-ohs or whatever, but the 20s, and then of course the 30s is going to be hilarious. I hope I have a band in the 40s and the 50s. But the 20s is my first chance to really make a pun in that way. So the CD was going to be titled, and maybe will be titled, Rhythm and Blues of the 20s. And so it's also deceptive in the fact that people, when they hear rhythm and blues, they think it's some kind of a soul band, or shuffle music. No, I want to play songs that are either based on the 12-bar blues or rhythm changes. I Got Rhythm. And that is taking it more to a swing era thing, not quite the 1920s, more 1930s. But anyway, out of the standards, out of No More All the Things You Are, that kind of vibe where it's a long 32, 40-bar form or whatever. This is 12 bars or I Got Rhythm. So I haven't gotten around to writing the 10 songs. I've got 4 done. They're all variations, and Anton, every time I try to write something simple, it winds up being complicated. So I can't help it. I've been trying to write simple music my whole life, and it's always twisted around somehow. But it does provide for kind of endless variation. I don't know how this is going to wind up. I've got a couple of months to figure it out over the summer. I got to try to stamp out COVID and help these other people get their projects started. And then I will dig into this. There's so many things you can do with the blues. You can play slow blues. It's so fun. You can do 12/8. Sounds a little bit more like 60s pop stuff, but you can do it like jazz and have fun with it. You can do the up-tempo Charlie Parker blues. Then you've got your rhythm changes. It's again the Charlie Parker option, but there's the slower ones like Good Bait. Sonny Rollins had a fun tune called No Mo that are sort of medium tempo. There's a lot of variations in there. I don't know what a rhythm changes ballad would sound like. Might have to try that. Or minor key rhythm changes. Might have to experiment with that. And there's always a way to kind of write a new bridge that can be whatever you want it to be, or interludes, or I don't know where it's going to take me in time, but I'm focusing on limitation of form now. So we're not making music about people. We're making music about music, and we're going to explore that. And it's really so that I could just have this CD title, Rhythm and Blues of the 20s.
Well,
okay.
You know how much I like the blues and the music of that era of the 20s and the 30s. So you definitely got my attention with that. You know how much I also like albums like the ones that Archie Shepp and Horace Parlan recorded together based on the blues in the 70s and 80s. So that sounds like a great idea. So, you know, when that comes to pass, when you record that, I hope it won't take another couple of years before you and I get to talk again here on the Jazz Flashes podcast, because that is definitely a project that sounds really interesting to me, Chris.
Thank you, Anton. Well, yeah, I'm always honored to appear before you and your listeners. I hold you in very high regard as once again a person that can really make a difference in this world. I thank you for that, and again extend heartfelt gratitude to anyone that has listened for this long to what I had to say. I'm flattered. You're too kind, really. I hope you're having a good long run or long drive or whatever it is you're up to. You flatter me, really. It's too kind. Anton, you do so much for us. And again, don't forget, folks, the power of the ears. What you're doing is so important. Perhaps it's important because it's not able to be measured. I don't know how you quantify your depth of understanding in this way, but it is experience and it makes a difference. I feel it. And others, you influence others. You are elevating the consciousness of humanity, and that cannot be underestimated at a time in our lives where big decisions have to be made. Things need to be confronted as a group, as individuals, and here you are actively taking part to be a more refined, sensitive human being. I mean, that's just the best thing you could do. So big thanks to everyone.
Well, without the music, there would be no shows like this one. So I do appreciate your music and your being here this afternoon. And yeah, as soon as we get another chance, we'll do it again. So thank you very much, Chris, for being on the Jazz Flashes podcast. Thank you very much also for these two albums, 100 Years from Today and On the Shoulders of Giants on the SteepleChase label out of Denmark, which I recommend to everybody out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep creating that wonderful music. We'll be here to listen to it. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure.
This has been a new episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast with Chris Byars and his albums 100 Years from Today, On the Shoulders of Giants on SteepleChase Records. We really do recommend them, and make sure to keep listening to great jazz like that. Make sure to follow Chris, not just on Facebook or on social media, but wherever he gets to play, hopefully very soon. And we look forward to more music from Chris Byars here on the Jazz Flashes podcast. It is my pleasure to be here with Chris, and we're going to finish right now by reminding you that this has been a new episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast, mine, and of course also Chris's, who spoke more than me, of course, is the copyright of this episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast, and you will be able to listen to it very soon on my YouTube channel, Anton GF. Thank you very much. Any comments, leave them underneath the video, and hopefully we'll get to do this very soon. Remember, as I always say when we finish an episode of the Jazz Flashes podcast, as old Ellington and old Strayhorn would say, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. See you soon. So long, everybody. Thank you, Chris Byars.